Hi, welcome to the 7th episode of FutureCast, and today we're going to be talking to Anna Worthington
De Matos.
Anna Worthington De Matos about what she's been doing in Iceland for the past three years.
Yep.
And this is the series of podcasts that we're going to do around the circular economy and bringing back some of the sustainability angles. We talked to Thor Sigfusson, the founder of Ocean Cluster, where we're sitting today. And we'll be doing more of these features of founders and others who are building things using circular economy as the basis. So Anna, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are listening to the FutureCast.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Iceland.
So I started in 2018 a tool library and a library of things. So basically it works the same way as a library does, and you just borrow what you need and then you bring it back and return it. So that way you save space, you save money, and you save resources. Because the more we share things, the less resources we need to create new things. Mm-hmm. There is a number that goes around, which is like an average usage of a drill is 12 minutes in its lifetime, and it has something around like 1,000 minutes lifespan. So we really need to make sure that we use everything that we create to its fullest, so we have, a circular economy when it comes to the material. Mm-hmm. And how we use the materials that we have.
I'm thinking about some of the backstory. So what brings you to Iceland? I mean, what brought you here? I mean, other than the tool library.
So I actually moved here because of Brexit.
Okay.
I was living in the UK and I was made redundant from my job. And at that point, Brexit had just happened. It would be really impossible to find a new job. And I was coming to Iceland a week before they made me redundant. So I came here and my friend was like, well, you have nothing left in the UK, you should move here. And I was like, okay. So I did. And then when I moved here, I really wanted to open like a makerspace cafe. There's a really cool one in the US that I've been to. And that was what I started the idea with. But then I started needing to use tools. And then I realized very quickly that that was extremely expensive to buy. My background is in conservation and restoration of historical objects and buildings, and I did a lot of restoration work. They used a lot of tools. So I always had a lot of tools on me in the UK. But when I moved here, I sold everything, and then I couldn't really afford a sender. It was like 35,000 kroner for a sender. I was like, I couldn't get my mind around it. And then I looked into rentals, and there was like a Markaður, and they were still quite expensive because although you could rent a tool for a day, you still had to buy all the bits and all the parts.
Right.
So if you're if you're renting a drill out, you still have to buy the bits yourself.
Right.
Because those are consumables, and you can understand that they don't particularly want to lend you out a bit.
Sure.
But that's also how you make some money, and it's not particularly the cheapest thing to do. So a 6 months membership at the tool library, 7,000 krona. An average rental of a tool at Reykjavík is about 3,000 to 5,000. And I'm not saying that they are, there's anything wrong with the business model. It is what it is. They have insurance and they make sure that the tools are different, but our approach is completely different.
Sure.
Which is we take things that are considered trash.
Sure.
We take things that people throw in SRPA or that they, throw away because they don't know the usage. There is some is broken.
I mean, guilty as charged, and I've done that, and
we all do it. We didn't know any better. We're about to know better, so
right.
This is the chance.
So let's talk a little bit about this better, because I'm very interested in this topic, and that's the reason you're here. So the tool library, I got wind of it 3 years back when you were running a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah.
And I was one of the contributors in the crowdfunding campaign.
You were a lifetime member.
Yeah, I'm a lifetime member to the tool library, and I want to kind of contextualize it just from my own perspective. My dad was a fixer. He could fix anything. You give him anything, he will fix it. So because of that, our home always had a lot of tools. He was like he was like a nerd for tools. He would make tools, he would, use tools.
Same thing, I'm from Brazil, and that's the same background I have. My granddad, my dad, all the same.
Yeah, so we kind of had this concept where we actually had kind of the skill and the will to fix things, but we kind of lost it because of convenience, right? I mean, I would say
convenience and marketing. Let's be honest. For instance, the 50s, marketing on sales and increasing economic growth by selling and making you feel bad when you don't own a drill, because you should own a drill. You have a certain standard in life. You should be owning a drill at this point of your life.
Yeah.
That sort of feelings
I usually ask my father-in-law to lend me his drill.
There you go. But that's great. So ask away. Like, no one should be borrowing from the tool library if they have a family member with a drill. Borrow from them first. Right. You know, like the whole thing with a generation gap we have, that is that previously people didn't have the resources we had, or they didn't think so little of the resources we have. Because right now, a lot of it, I think hopefully the next generation will be better than the previous generation. But basically, there's a lot of waste, and there's waste because we think things are wasteful. And we don't care for them. So, like, there is someone donated a drill to us that is like 40 years old, and there's this beautiful story of how their granddad gave to them, and is being in the family, and now it's at the tool library and you can borrow it, and that's what we want. We want to keep giving life to those things, and we do have a habit of attaching sentimental value and the value that what people think of us when we don't own certain things.
Right.
Property, children, like when we don't have, like there's a standard that is considered the norm, and that's what everyone tries to achieve with. The thing is, there is no norm. The norm is made up.
Right.
So it's time for us to shake up a little bit things and make a new normal, which is do whatever you want, how you want it, and be kind to each other.
Right.
And have an economy that is kind to each other.
Right.
An economy that doesn't use materials in a way that are wasteful, that doesn't overproduce cheap with labor. Like, we have to remember that when something is very, very cheaply made, that means someone is really basically a slave of that system. And how do you have in your conscience that that's okay? That's up to you, but not everyone feels that way.
The interesting aspect in Iceland, what has always fascinated me is that, it's a small country. I came here 15 years back, so it was kind of like I was inculcated into the culture, and there was a lot of this building, fixing. I mean, most people that I've met, they're pretty handy with their hand.
Yeah.
They make their own deck. They usually fix their own homes. They do a lot of the work in things that they think is valuable, right? But I don't know the data on this, and I think that's something that I should have done research on. I don't know how much we throw in Iceland. It's
a lot. I know that UK professor, how he made a research that the biggest amount of impacts that we have CO2 emissions wise is imports into Iceland of products. And a lot of those products could actually be shared. A lot of those things that people are importing could actually be shared between multiple people. And this is the thing that we are not really taking into consideration right now, and that's where we need to change. I'm not talking about sharing economy, because sharing economy leads to ownership. You have to own something to be able to share it.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a circular economy, a place where we present access. And access is the most valuable thing.
Right.
Forget money, forget anything else. Access to education, access to opportunity, access to people. Like in the last podcast you did with Catherine, you guys talking about the value of human resources. It's important to know. I think the tool library wouldn't have been as successful as it is now if I hadn't networked as hard as I did. Right? And it's not something that comes natural to me.
Right.
I'm not a people's person, I'm a things person. I like fixing stuff. That's where, I really do well. So it's something that you have to force yourself to do it. And it's part of the reason why we have survived so far. I say survived because it's not been easy.
Right. So let's talk about that. I think that's also an aspect that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
The circular economy, I do agree to the broader concepts, which is we should waste less. We should try to fix things if we can. But it is always a harder choice when the cost of your time becomes more and more and more. Like, for example, at least as I see it, again, what I do and how I make my living, it is probably cheaper for me to just buy a new thing than me trying to fix it. But if I make it a hobby to learn to fix things, then it becomes something that I enjoy doing. How do you kind of change the mindset of people to say, you know what, you can actually make this into a hobby and you can actually fix these things? What are you guys doing?
We have a repair cafe event that we run every month. We have about 30 volunteers, maybe 10 volunteers who come to each event, and we just fix things for people for free.
Okay.
And it's a community event. You come over, you have a coffee, you have a chat, you sit down with the person who is fixing the item for you, you see what they're doing, that you can talk and interact to them. People that have those skills that haven't been using them before now can use it as a hobby once a month and do it. So right now we just got a grant from the Climate Fund to be able to take this project around Iceland. So we're going to make an educational project where we're going to go around and teach people about circular economy and repair cafes and how they can create their own projects. Because for example, in the last 2 years, obviously COVID stopped us from running repair cafes last year, but before that we saved 642 kilos from going to waste. That's half a ton of waste that we saved from landfills. Imagine if we do this all over the country. The amount of impact we will have is huge. And forget CO2 emission for a second, but focus on like amount of stuff. Like last year, I think there was an article that said that basically we have now more man-made things than we have people. That is mental. This is crazy.
Well, of course it is crazy if you put it in that context.
But it is the context, it is the reality. Those are the facts. We have created this much stuff. We have that much waste, and we don't actually have created a system that deals with it. And that's what we need to change.
We do read news of how all the countries that we've been sending waste to are sending them back.
Exactly.
Saying, we don't need it anymore.
Exactly. And it's only fair to do that. And, we send waste to Africa and so on, and then they are responsible for breaking things down. And certain things, we are fully aware that they don't break down. They're not recyclable. Plastic is a huge issue, and is a huge issue that unfortunately a lot of people are still unwilling to tackle. And it's unwillingness because of funds, because it's cheaper, because it's easier to produce. And it's not really, we just need to man up to it and say or woman up to, whichever you want to take it. But basically just say, we need to change. It's going to cost us a lot of money. Let's do it now so we don't have to deal with it later.
I mean, the idea of change, and I've been part of some changes in Iceland. One of the things is about this whole startup community event and community activities around bringing the forefront of building technology-based companies out of Iceland. All that is something that I've been started 2009. Right after the collapse. So it's been something I've been part of. And change never happens overnight, right? It takes time for change to happen. So you prepare and prepare and prepare, and then a decade passes and then the change happens. And I'm very optimistic about the circular economy concept. That is like what you're doing, which is related to reducing waste by teaching people how they can fix things and kind of getting the next generation involved in this activity. So let's talk a little bit about that, some of the struggles that you're going through, because I think that is important, because you can't run a business that doesn't focus on business.
So this is the problem there. What is business? We've been focusing on making money. That's the priority. Forget that. People should be the priority all around, because we are still the ones. If you put money and things in front of human life, what are you? It's not a good. I would not be able to sleep at night doing something like that. So we need to deprioritize things. We need to change the prioritization. We need to make sure that well-being is better cared for. We need to make sure that people have access, even if they don't have the money. It shouldn't be a meritocracy anymore. It should be we have accessibility to everything. Because in the end of the day, meritocracy is very difficult when it comes to making things even for people that don't have the same access that others do. So if you don't have the same access to education, you don't have the same access to mature things, then you're not going to have the same fair shot.
Right, but I mean, of course, we live in Iceland, and it's a different. Sure,
context. I guess it's like, well, obviously I'm from Brazil and I have that whole background behind it, of course.
And again, it's kind of weird when we talk about money, and I'm a venture investor. I invest in things, so money is kind of the only commodity that I have. I kind of have a different view about money. I don't think money is anything else. It's just a resource. It's just a tool.
Sure.
I don't see it as anything. Money is just a means to an end. When
there's a hoard of it, because that's the issue. When there's a hoard of it, then it's a resource that is not available, right? So the accessibility is the issue again.
Agreed. I mean, from the context of accessibility, of course, I come from India. We know you come from Brazil. We kind of come from different cultures, but the context is very similar. For example, people who had resources did hoard it, because that used to be the world. But I don't believe the world today is that way, because you can make money, right? Like, for example, a simple concept, we've chatted about it, which is the helium network. It's a simple hotspot. It mines helium tokens. And by the way, from the time you asked me if you had agreed to have one hotspot, you could have earned a lot more money by just running it in the tool library.
Sure, but when we had that conversation, you told me you were going to keep up the helium tokens.
No, I didn't say that. I said the helium tokens that I will keep until the cost of the hotspot is paid for. And then you said, I'm going to make the hotspot myself.
Well, because it's open source, so anyone can have access to the tools and the items can do it.
That's right. If you can do it, and if you can do it and you can mine your own coin,
that's fair. Exactly, that's fair. But that was not the understanding that I had from the conversation.
Sure. It's besides the point. But the point I'm trying to make here is that we live in a world where access to money is not anymore a limitation. It used to be.
You say that, but it still is. It is a limitation. So
let's talk about it from the context of tool library. So what's the big challenge going on with running the tool library?
So we have the major challenge is income, because we from the beginning decided to keep costs low. So a membership is $12,000 a year, which is quite cheap, but not everyone needs tools all the time. The issue that I have is that people don't have the foresight of being able to think, I'll buy a membership every year because I will need tools this many times a year. What they think is they only buy the membership when they need the tool. So before the summer, we have a huge peak where everyone buy memberships, and then during the winter we have a very low. So now we're learning. Like, the first year was very difficult because we didn't know what to expect, obviously. These last few years have been a little bit easier. Obviously, COVID was chaos.
Like everywhere.
Everywhere. So that was a difficult one to ride off. But we have been very lucky to create projects where we can actually expand the tool library. So right now we have a project called Hringrásarsetur, which is the idea is to put self-checkout tool library units in the libraries, and then people can borrow the basic drill, the hammer and the saw and so on from their local community. So that would be easier access to people. The idea to do that, and then obviously if you need something bigger like a lawnmower or so on, you can just come downtown and bring it and get that from us. So we have that project going, and that was basically what got us through last year. We moved 3 times. It's it's been an interesting year, to say the least.
Right.
And it's awareness, it's foresight, and obviously the fact that I'm not Icelandic does have holds it back a little bit, because I don't speak the language, so my communication can be limited.
Sure.
But obviously now we are lucky, I'm not sure how to say it, but there is the grants from the government to be able to hire employees and so on. So we're going to take advantage of that and hire some people so we can try and make the conversion and provide everything in Icelandic and in English. Obviously, I'm still trying to learn it, but it's only been 4 years. I'll get there eventually.
I've been here for 15, and by the way, nobody understands when I speak Icelandic, so it's all good.
That makes me feel better.
So on a much more lighter note, tell me a little bit more about Brazil. What brought you to England and what brought you?
Brazil is in a terrible, terrible state.
Yeah.
Talking about the money situation, last year there were 800,000 people gone into poverty and 11 new billionaires made in Brazil. Mm-hmm. That's where I talk about the hoarding of money. Mm-hmm. Brazil is a very difficult country to live. Everyone's in survival mode. Mm-hmm. It's dog eats dog, and I hate that sort of behavior. I can't deal with it. I can't walk down the street and see kids and still not want to do something about it. And that doesn't make me a good person to live over there. I don't have enough thick skin, I guess, to be able to survive in a country like that. Something like what I'm doing right now there would be extremely difficult to make it happen. Mostly because, Brazil looks to the US a lot for inspiration.
Sure.
And unfortunately, the last few years, the inspiration hasn't been, the best when it comes to people.
Yeah, it's weird that we say this, as Warren Buffett says. It takes 10 years to build a reputation, and 10 seconds to lose it.
Yeah.
And I think we've all seen what happens when people who should show leadership don't. But that being said, I have friends in Brazil, and of course, I have a different perspective from them. And again, it's a large country, lots of people.
Sure, it all also depends on what class they're in.
Yeah, as I said, and by the way, I come from India, and in India we invented the class system.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
We sure did.
Brazil is very, very much trying to perfect it, though.
Yeah, and I'm actually quite optimistic about India, because we've kind of broken out of that class system, and we are now investors in a couple of teams in India. These kids are making amazing stuff. They make new stuff, and they are billionaires now, not because they're hoarding, it's because they created, right? They created something that the world wants, and that's kind of the world that I am aspiring to do, which is, if the world wants it and you have the capacity to make it, and you don't need a lot today to make it. That's the other part, which I think maybe there is a disconnect.
But I think that's the issue there. It depends where you are at, right? It depends what is your secure blanket system. Who is your parents? How do you have a house that you don't have to pay for?
Right.
It's like the amount of people saying like, oh, I'm buying a house at 23. You didn't pay rent for 23 years. You didn't, you only did save money and work. And that's fine, but you had the opportunity to do that.
Right.
Not everyone does.
Right.
When we say that it's easy and then anyone can do it, that's being naive on my perspective. It's not that easy. It's not everyone can do it. I have been extremely lucky. A lot of wrong things happen and right things happen for me to be able to get here, right? But I just rolled with the dice. I just go with whatever is happening. But not everyone has the opportunity,
Again, as I said, I think if we are thinking about all the problems in the world, we don't have enough time to chat about it.
For sure. What we're talking about is like in stating circular economy, we have to have those hard conversations. We have to have the conversations where we say, maybe we have to change our views on certain things that we've been viewing as a positive for a very long time. For a very long time, being rich was everyone's goal. Everyone wants to have money.
It still is.
Yes, but it shouldn't be. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It should be content, be happy, do something you love.
Sure.
Because if you do something you love, you will be okay. Imagine if everyone had housing, food, and access, and they could become whoever they want to become. Yeah. How beautiful would that world be? How much more potential would we have?
I think before we go into really uncharted territory here, I'm going to call time out. And the reason for that is that we have enough data on that part.
Yep.
We know that experiment didn't work. It failed.
Well, you mean the rats one?
No, I'm talking about making sure everybody is equally, given the access to everything.
Okay.
It didn't work. It failed. That model failed.
Okay. Where was this? Sorry.
It's a place called Russia. Didn't work.
But there is different ways as well. Like,
and then, by the way, if you think about that part, again, the unfortunate thing is that and by the way, I studied economics. There's this concept called few rule over many. There is a concept called few rule over many. That's how the humanity works. Unfortunately, there is no way for us to evenly match everything because when you put the human psychological aspect into it, there is a hierarchy. We're built that way. That's what made us survive, by the way. You needed to have that hierarchy to make things survive. If you go into a tribe, there is a hierarchy. There is an agreed hierarchy. It's not voted hierarchy, but it's an agreed hierarchy. There are village elders, there is respect. All that is built into our genome, if you really think about it. And if you try to take away that part and say everybody's equal and we should give everybody the same resource, we see that it doesn't really balance out.
Okay, but if we do give everyone the resources and it doesn't balance out, then it is because some are more competent than others. But the other person that is not as competent still has housing and food.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
And by the way, the housing and food part is not a problem in Iceland, right? I mean,
it can be. Rental can be quite complicated. In the last few years, the rental market has been extremely high. Like the Tool Library has to move so many times because we can't afford rent. And it is an issue. And taxation is a problem. Like the cost of ownership of property is also very high. So it trickles down, and I get it that we are also paying because they have to pay, and that's not the issue here. What I'm saying is there is an issue in pricing.
Right. I mean, Iceland, obviously, one of the things my friends who come from the U.S. they always look at me and say, "I've never paid more for a burger in my life," but that's Iceland. You just have to factor that in. I mean, I like the aspect of what you're doing. I mean, my bigger question to you is that how do you make it more mainstream? How do you get the next generation involved? I mean, what are the things you're doing there?
So this is the thing. We're trying to engage by creating more interesting workshops. So we do workshops on how to make your own beeswax wraps, how to upcycle candle wax. We do workshops. We do the RVK Cafe events. We now have a partnership with Bioparadis, so we'll be doing the RVK Cafe events there, and we'll be then screening a movie or a documentary on the topic of waste. And the first one is in the 3rd of May, so like the 2nd of May. So it's going to be. Things are happening and trying to engage on that level. The thing is, the next generation, I'm less concerned about them because they already are integrating a lot into this.
That's great.
They are really very much into divide or let's share things. They already do that on their day-to-day basis. It's the generation of mine and the one previous to that, which are the ones that have the capital. They are the ones that,
don't have to worry about them because we all, by the way, I probably belong in the other one and we're all going to die, so it's fine.
I'm aware we're all going to die eventually, but at least let's do it so we have a good conscience when we do so.
I'm more interested to learn about how you're engaging with, say, the Menntaskóli. I mean, my daughter is in Versló, and I would like more of them to be involved in things of this nature.
Of course, but right now we're not at the moment, to be very honest. We haven't tackled that yet because we are trying to first bridge the gap with the older generation that does have the conscience to then take that home, right? The younger generation have a lot of support from the young environmentalists, and they have a lot of environmental education in the schools right now, which is actually doing the job for us. The main issue we have that we figured out so far is tackling as adults to be willing to share more. We are the problem right now. We are the ones that have to have that in conscience. When it comes to circular economy, it's not only the circularity of the materials, but the maintenance of what we do in the items that we own. That has to be cleaned, that has to be taken care of. And to do that, we really need to be able to have a support system, not only from the government, but from the community as well.
Have you tried working with, or at least reaching out to, I mean, I've been quite impressed with SRPA and kind of like the recycle world that we have in Iceland. How are you engaging with them?
We're not really. We tried a few times to integrate and ask for example, if they have any tools to let us know. But we're such a small speck in this amount of stuff that they do that we obviously get lost in the system. It is something that we are more than willing to do do and more than willing to happen. We got very lucky. They awarded us a grant in the end of last year for the self-checkout units, which was great because we could then do some more of the work that we need on that. We're aiming to deliver it in July, but we are like a few million kroner down that we need to do. So there will be hopefully more engagement in the future. But you have to remember, I'm a foreigner that comes from nowhere and no one knows who I am.
Sure.
And to then try and get into doors is not as easy.
Sure.
You know, you have to know someone or to be willing to.
Yeah, this is one of the common themes that I have kind of seen with kind of immigrants moving in. We chatted with Catherine about this as well. But I mean, the other part of it is that it's not as closed door as people think it could be.
No, it's just a matter of catching people at the right time. You know, it's all right for you to send an email, but that doesn't mean it's going to be seen or they're busy and so on. But what I try to do is try to engage with people when I actually meet them and maybe put a face to a name and an email and make sure that when I do reach out, I'm remaining still in the time we did meet.
Sure.
Because that's the only way that people can really engage. Because there's so much stuff happening everywhere. Terra is also doing a really good job in the north, and there's lots of, you know, zero waste projects. There's so many cool zero waste and circular economy projects coming up right now. Like Otto Seeds are coming in, then there is Endertak, which is like a clothing design they made jumpers from Iceland Air, blankets they're thrown away. You know, there's so much stuff that we can do to extend the lease of life of all those materials. Like we're also doing talks right now. We have a partnership with the Design Museum, and we're going to be doing a talk on materials for designers, so how to choose a material. So my background is in conservation, but what I actually study is how material decompose and how to prevent it. So we're going to talk about when you're choosing a material for design, what sort of material you go for, why do you go for that? Is recycling better, or is the new material better? Is starting from scratch better with something new, or is something that is already there made into something else the best way to go to?
I mean, Anna, I think we can talk for hours because I think there's layers of conversation we could have: philosophical, societal, economic, and so on and so forth. But it's been fun. Thanks for stopping by, and I'm really a big supporter of what you guys are doing.
I appreciate it.
And hopefully, you know, we'll get more people engaged in the tool library. And also, hopefully, we get more into fixing and mending things and reusing things and designing things. And by the way, building things, because we
have
can.
A whole generation of skills there. They're just not using them. Let's use it. Let's share their skills, guys.
I've been a big proponent in Iceland of making things here, right? You know, I think one of the big things is, I just had a health condition where I'm getting more and more into vegetarian food. And I go into a vegan shop and I look at it and I'm like, you know, this is not very sustainable. We are shipping this stuff from all over the world into Iceland.
Plastic.
And then I feel like, oh, I'm saving the planet, but I'm really not.
There is a big contradiction with things like that. There is so much that we can do. I completely agree with you. I think there's a lot of things should be made local. Yeah. There's a market for all of this, right? We're creating, like you said, in a way, I think you are pretty spot on, which in Iceland is very easy to make things happen. Yeah. Right? We are a small society. We can just have an idea and make it happen. Where elsewhere, that's a discussion for another day.
Exactly.
But I do think that when it comes to actually having an idea coming up and making it happen, you know, the community in general is pretty pro.
Right.
So,
as I said, we can talk for ages about this. And,
I'm sorry,
and I think we try to keep the FutureCast to a 30-minute kind of a limit. But that being said, it was fun chatting. Yes. There's so much we can share. There's one founder here. She's making plastic out of seaweed.
Yes, I see that.
So again, we're starting to see lots of great ideas come into the forefront, and I'm very excited about this whole new kind of circular economy concept, because I think there's support from all levels, and everybody wants to do the right thing. I think
exactly. We just need to give people the opportunity to do so,
and it takes time. It takes time.
It does.
So the idea is to kind of change minds, change ideas, and hopefully, given time, we all will
just gonna see
leave
what
this
happens, and
world
we'll
better
try.
than we got it.
For sure.
That's probably a good place to end that. And with that, once again, thank you for
Thank you,
stopping
Bala.
by.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.